Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Soul Focused Radio. This is your host, Martin Friedman, and I am joined once again by Tirza Barnes-Griffith. Hello, Tirza. How are you?
Hello, so happy to be back, Martin.
I'm glad to have you back. And I told you I was going to tell on myself. I could not remember your last name. I knew it was
Mhm.
Barnes Griffith something, but I couldn't remember if it was Griffith or Griffin. So
You
I
all
just
see how
didn't
he
say it.
does. We work
I just
together every day. Now look at that.
I know, and it's on your email and everything. It's terrible, you know. So I'm just like Tirza, Tirza, yes, Tirza.
It's all good. Martin,
But
you are
what?
forgiven.
Thank you so much. And at Soul Focus Group, we tell on ourselves. We try to ground everything in honesty as much as we possibly can, and so sometimes that means telling on ourselves. So I want to jump right back in to the conversation that we were having. I've loved that conversation. I loved everything you were saying. I love the say it again. I always get confused. There's 6 pathways to freedom.
Well,
Uh,
the realm of freedom is based
Round
on six truths.
six
Six truths.
truths.
Would you
Okay.
like me
Yeah.
to remind our audience what those six
Well,
truths are?
I do, but I want you to do it in a very specific context, right? So,
Okay.
as I want to transition the conversation, we kind of went back and forth a little bit in that first session around personal and individual coaching, and then the group work, the collective work that we do more with Soul Focus Group, and I know you do in some consulting. I really want to have the conversation about what does social consciousness look like in the corporate world, and the context I want to provide as you share those 6 realms again, and then highlight whatever you want in terms of working in that corporate world. When I say corporate world, I want to make sure our listeners understand that I'm referring to nonprofits, I'm referring to education, I'm referring to government, because all of that is run in a corporate manner for the most part. And if if you're sitting there saying, well, I have a nonprofit and my nonprofit's not corporate, well, the people that fund your nonprofit are probably run in a corporate manner. So when we say that corporate world, what does social consciousness look like? Does social consciousness have a place in the corporate world? What we're saying is we're including the educational fields, we're including healthcare, we're including nonprofits, we're including everything because it's all in that model. So share again the 6 realms of freedom with us, and then we'll start the conversation about how those are applied to social change in that corporate environment.
Yeah, sure. And one word that I'd like to offer to sum up the corporate, the nonprofit, it's institutions. Institutions, right? So we all
Right.
work and are connected to some type of institution. And that word is really important because for Soul Focus Group, we talk about racism. And we believe that there are 3 forms of racism: individual, institutional, and cultural. And when we look at it in terms of the institutional, it's really important that we are understanding that institutional is always connected to this idea of access granted and access denied, right? Right. This is this systemic power, the connection to that. And it's important that I say this because this is what we believe at the Soul Focus Group. And so when I introduce or reintroduce the realms of freedom, and as we continue to have this conversation, and when you ask me, what does it mean to have social consciousness? Well, we have to remember how our institutions have been created. It's around this idea of access granted and access denied. And so just going back to those realms of freedom and what I call the 6 truths. It's one, life is working for you and not capitalized, NOT, not
Right.
against you. It is the
Mm.
truth that everything is working for your good. Everything is working for our good. That God is only good and it's only working in our favor. And that honoring yourself is your greatest priority, and that it is possible to have anything that we desire. It is possible for you to have anything that you desire. And number 6, you are the creator of you. Let's just
Mm.
pause for a minute and visualize that. You are the creator of you. And here's what I find is so critical in the work that I do with my coaching clients: to be able to embrace that truth and give themselves permission to create themselves and their destiny. because the practice is often, I am doing what God wants me to do. I must wait and listen for what God wants me to do. God knows the plans for my life, and I cannot step out and think for myself in terms of creating me. And the conversation behind that is not void of God. It's God is always in it because he's with you. You are one with him. We are all one and connected and aligned with God. And so oftentimes God is looking at us like, would you just get started and move on the creation of you? Because I already established the plan for you. It's good. You just have to step out in it. And so looking at and embracing the truth and knowing that you have permission to create you because God is already in you, informing you and guiding you of what that creation is, you should just fly with it, move with it, and embrace and trust the process and enjoy the journey of creating you. So those are the realms of freedom, which are based on 6 truths, Martin.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that again for sure. And, what I thought of when you were saying, first of all, I love that you talk about God and you talk about God being external in some ways. And then I really heard you also say that we are all God, like we're all connected to God. Like God is us. God is in us. God is not disconnected from us. I want to make sure I heard you say that clearly, right? Because that's what I really heard you say is that
Oh,
when you talk about
absolutely.
God, you're talking about us. Like it's us looking at us saying also like, I have a plan for us and I'm not doing the plan I have for us too, right? It's not just the external God saying that.
No, you're absolutely right, Martin. What we have done and have been trained to do, and remember, I told you my history and my spiritual
Yes.
journey, starting as a
Yes.
Christian woman who
Yes.
believed I must look up to God and pray to this higher deity to deliver me, give me what I want, and almost begging for permission. And that is not the way we're designed. So I am going to quote our CEO who came up with a brilliant acronym for God. And you know this. The G is for genius, the O is for originality, and the D is for distinction. We are God. We are genius. Every single one of us. We are all original. There is no other Tirza on this universe, honey. It is me.
That's right. That's right.
It is me.
That's right.
and,
That's right.
and Martin, there is no other Martin like you. And so how
Oh,
you do things, how you
I'm a
flow, how
I'm a
you
dime a
create.
dozen. I'm a dime a dozen, Tears. Let's be honest.
No.
There's 1,000 of me, a million of me. I'm a dime a dozen.
No.
Keep
See,
going.
no, brother, you need freedom. Because that's not true.
Freedom from that
Right?
ego, making myself small, devaluing myself, using ego to
Exactly.
devalue. I need to be free. I got you. I
Yes,
got you.
that thinking is BS. Okay, it's BS because you are distinct. You are so distinct. And so when we embrace our God, we start to line up with those 6 truths, knowing we are the creator of us. And everything that are supposed to create and we are becoming is already in us. We just have to line up to it. That's where the real freedom comes in when we are lining up to what's already ours. And I feel emotional when I say that because every time I get closer to lining up to my God, my genius, my originality, my distinction, I'm flying high. I'm flying high. I'm really free. And I don't give a damn what anyone thinks. And I don't need your opinion and I don't need to consult with you because I am aligned and true to me.
Mm.
That's the freedom we're speaking about.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So I want to transition us just a little bit. Like, what does that look like if I come to you and I have a nonprofit, or I come to you and I work for city government, or I come to you and I'm a development manager in a corporation and we're interested, like everybody these days, we're interested in incorporating, anti-racism or social justice or racial equity or whatever the terminology people are using. And I want to transform my organization around that. So I come to you and I say, Tirza, I've heard about what you do. I listened to this podcast. The host was incredible and you were really good too. And I learned all about the 6 realms, right?
Wait, Martin, I'm glad you
You
were
catch that?
incredible and I was good. Okay.
You catch that? I was just making sure you were listening and that our listeners were listening. Well, I didn't want to make myself small anymore, right? So
That's right. That's right.
so I was listening to this podcast and both of you were just fabulous, just out of this world, amazing. And I learned about these 6 realms, and I also know that you're doing work now in that social consciousness realm. So what does that look like? How would I apply any or all of those to trying to transform around race, racism, social justice, social consciousness?
Yeah. It begins with 2 questions.
Hmm.
What does that organization want to become? And who do they want their employees to become? The what is, it's the responsibility to the social consciousness work, the responsibility to racial equity in the workplace and increasing this, the conversation and having the real conversations about racial awareness. And it goes to the what does an organization want to become? So even in the work that I'm doing with different organizations, the big question is, are you or are you not becoming an anti-racist organization? What are you standing for? Or are you going to continue to have conversations around DEI and try to repackage, and cover up what the real issues are, right? That's really the question. What do you want to become? And in your becoming, you're creating the space for your employees to become something, to become their who, to evolve in their consciousness, to evolve in their understanding, to know the truth and to be held responsible for the truth and to incorporate practices that align to something that is really about transformational change,
Right.
or what we also call cultural integration. So it's that question of the what and the who. And it really begins there. So when I'm sitting down with an organization and conducting a needs assessment, that's a big question. And oftentimes leaders have to step away and reflect on that question before moving forward. Because any work that I do or in my partnership with the Soul Focus Group, what we do together, is really important that we understand the direction the organization wants to go through. And remember, during our first recording, we talked about strategy. That strategy is designed and developed when an organization is able to clearly and concisely answer the question, what do you want to become? And how do you want to see your employees evolve through this process of aligning to what the organization is saying they want to become?
Right. Right. So, I just want to know, like, what does that look like for me? Right. Like, I hear you, but Tirza, 26 plus years of doing this work, I've seen so many different organizations try. We talked about that. You referenced it. We talked about the intent and the impact. Like, I've seen so many organizations try to get to long-term transformational change, and I've really never seen any organization do it, right? I've really never seen any organization do it. So how do they take what you're talking about and apply it in a way that really sticks in a long-term transformational way?
So I'm going to speak from, my expertise, which is
Hmm.
mostly in the spiritual, personal development lane. Okay, I want to stay true to that. And so
Hmm.
if we're thinking about those realms of freedom and connecting it to those 6 truths I've introduced, the same question or the same information or knowledge I would share with a coaching client is the same approach that I would take with an organization. And so one thing that I would continue to ask a coaching client is, are you ready to take personal responsibility for you?
Mm.
So you know these truths, but are you ready to take personal responsibility for you? So that same question can be used with an organization. As an organization, are you ready to take personal responsibility for what's to come? Are you ready to take personal responsibility for what needs to happen and so that it aligns with what you said you want your organization to become? Right? So there's a practice and a discipline that's necessary when you say, I'm ready to take responsibility. Leaders, CEOs, executives, are you
Right.
ready to take personal responsibility where it begins with you and ends with you? Are you ready for that? To align every effort and commit. Remember, we spoke about commitment in the first recording, and commit to what you say you want.
Right.
These are hard questions, but if we don't answer these questions honestly and transparently, it's all just fluff at the end of the day. We're all just working without achieving the ultimate goal. Whatever that goal is, the
Right.
commitment and the responsibility is essential.
What really resonated with me is just thinking about my experience most of the time is that organizations as well as individuals list all the reasons why they can't do things, right? Like individuals and organizations will not take responsibility, but say, well, it's the funder's fault, right? I can't do what I want to do. I can't do my vision because of the funders. I can't do it because of government regulations. Mostly we hear people talk about why they can't. So that really resonated with me. I just really wanted to highlight that point.
Yeah, yeah, the responsibility. So the next thing I would ask to that point is, what are you ready to let go of?
Mm.
Are you going to let go of some things like that deficit thinking of I can't because of, right? So let's focus on the individual, the coaching client, who has all the reasons, as I shared before, of why they can't be their highest, truest, and best self. Okay, there's a story that stays on replay. The story of why I can't be all that I'm meant to be. I was working with a coaching client. She said, I wake up depressed every morning and feeling sad. And I've always been this way. This is normal for me. This is who I am. And I followed up with, who told you that story? Where did that story come from? And when are you going to stop putting it on replay? When are you going to stop rewinding the story and let go of the story and create a new one? So the same thing with an organization. I come from the nonprofit sector. I know all the reasons why things don't work in nonprofit. I know all the reasons that people have as to why things don't work. But there has to come a point, especially when we're speaking about social consciousness and social justice in these organizations, that we say we have to let go of something. And sometimes it means making peace with what is, stop struggling with what is, and come up with new and creative ways to address what is. Sometimes we recycle and we get stuck and we don't tap into that genius. We don't tap into that originality. We don't tap into that distinction because we're replaying the story, because we're blind by old beliefs. We're so programmed by the program that we don't step out and
Mm-hmm.
tap into our full power. The reality is what was, but now is what is. And so for any organization who's thinking about social consciousness and really making a transformation in any way, you have to be willing to let go of the what was and step into a new time of what is. And COVID has pushed many of us to create a vision beyond what we thought would be or what we thought what was, and be creative and do something different. And so now is the time to step out, to take the responsibility, to let go of what was, focus on the now, because we can't undo the past. And this goes for, I'm speaking to organizations and I'm speaking to
Mm-hmm.
individuals. We
Mm-hmm.
cannot undo the past. We can only do the now. We cannot do the future. We can only do the now. I'm capitalizing NOW.
Mm-hmm.
Our now, what we do right now, will shape our future. What we do right now will shape our future. If we want more diversity in our organizations for the future, we have to move on that now. If we want to see more equity in our organizations, we have to create that right now. If we want more inclusion, it starts now. The work has to be put in now. And then the third thing is, when we are clear that, okay, I am responsible for myself, I'm responsible for this organization, I'm letting go of what was, and I'm embracing what is, it's time to unleash yourself and flow and free in your infinite potential.
Mm-hmm.
Every individual in every organization or institution has infinite potential. Think about that. How powerful and how beautiful that was. And the Spirit spoke to me about the power of infinite potential. So much so that when I was driving in my car, Martin,
Mm-hmm.
and I was reflecting on my life and just being still and quiet and letting the Spirit speak through me and to me, and it whispered to me, you are a being of infinite potential.
Mm-hmm.
Martin, I cried. I had little tears coming down my
Mm-hmm.
eyes. It wasn't, like ugly. It was
Right.
it was a nice,
Right.
spiritual, pure cry that told me I'm on the right track and just keep unleashing yourself. Follow those realms of truth. You will be so amazed of what you're going to create from your God, your genius, originality, and distinction.
Mhm.
An organization and an individual has infinite potential, but we have to know it and move in that knowing. Remember, I said in the first recording, we have to shift our perspective. We have to put on a new pair of glasses and see things from a different lens.
Right.
Will an institution be bold and courageous and confident enough to start looking at their organization in a way that's viewed from a new lens and a new perspective that embraces social consciousness, that it even embraces spiritual consciousness, that embraces culture, that is really bringing in the integration that Soul Focus Group always speaks about? Imagine that. That's infinite potential at work.
Right. Right. No, this is powerful. And I mean, you really have me thinking, right? Because all the different, organizations I've worked with over the years to try to come to this long-term transformational change around race and racism and other social justice issues always try to solve the problems with the thinking that got them in the problems. We talk about that a lot. There's a bunch of different quotes that really lead to that. But what I hear you saying, Tirza, is that if we have not been thinking about solving our problems either individually or at our organizations, at our nonprofits or wherever else, with the idea that we have unlimited potential and we can create whatever we want. Because what you have me thinking about, of like, what do we have to let go of? Well, my experience is that one of the main things these organizations have to let go of, as well as us as individuals, is we have to let go of fear. There's so much fear. When I was in that nonprofit world, it was fear of upsetting the board, fear of upsetting funders, fear of not, doing what you're known for doing. And then, now people are going to see you as taking on something new and you're going to lose that support, financial and otherwise. So that's just one example, but there's so much fear, and it's grounded in not believing that we are capable of operating outside of the realms that aren't free, the realms that we've been operating inside of that are very limited and limiting. That's what you really have me thinking about right now.
Well, Martin, who runs the institutions?
Mm-hmm.
People. So it's
Right.
not the institution operating out of fear. It's the
Yeah.
people operating the institution that
Right.
operates out of fear. So it's
Absolutely.
really about the individuals, the leaders, the staff, the dedicated employees who have to be courageous enough to stop operating out of fear and follow the process of taking personal responsibility, being willing to let go and unleash themselves and trying something different. It's the individuals, right, who create the structure for the organization to do bigger and better things. So the question is, will the individuals who make up institutions step
Mm-hmm.
outside of the box, embrace the unknown, stop being attached to the what was?
Mm-hmm.
And you know something? If they're functioning like this in their professional lives,
Mm-hmm.
they're almost always functioning this way in their personal lives,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And vice
right?
versa too, right? Yeah, and vice versa, right?
Sure.
It's a reflection, right? Both of them are they're reflected back. I think what you're saying is also really important just in the context of white culture too. White culture is either or. It's always, you're either doing the internal work or the external work. You're either, focusing on social justice or you're focusing on, providing services. I also hear you really saying that, this really ultimately is about integration, that we have to be integrating all these different approaches, including, not seeing the collective as being reflective of us as individual and not seeing our individual being reflective of how we function in that collective.
Yeah, absolutely. And so in that, I'm thinking about what we speak about as Soul Focus Group as the 5 practices of what is performance expression, right? Which is the
Hmm.
opposite
Right.
of natural expression. And performance expression is not what we want to embrace. I want to make that clear for individuals who may not have heard us speak about this. It is toxic to the very thing that we're speaking to. It is what keeps us in fear. It
Hmm.
is what keeps us doing what we've been doing and not getting and ending up with the same exact results and not being cutting edge. And it prevents us from tapping into our genius, our originality, and distinction. So here are the 5 things that organizations have to be careful with and individuals have to be careful with. We have to be careful with
Hmm.
comparing ourselves to the nonprofit who does similar work to us. Or if
Right.
you're an individual, comparing yourself to someone else who's doing similar work to you. We have to be very careful of that because it stagnates us and it keeps our eyes off of ourselves. Our eyes are focused on what's happening around us rather than what's happening within
Hmm.
us. And remember, I talked about the honoring of self as one of those realms to freedom, right? When we're so
Right.
busy comparing, we're saying what I have to offer this world, this universe is not enough. So I must compare, which is a looking down of self, right? An organization looking down to what it's doing, which could be really fantastic work, but it prohibits you from really rising up to what is the infinite potential that we spoke about.
Right.
The
Right.
next thing is the pleasing, right? Being very careful of that. So when we speak about nonprofits, it's difficult because the pleasing is always connected to the most part to the funder, right?
Hmm.
Pleasing the funder, doing what the funder says or what the funder
Hmm.
dictates as success. I remember in my days of the nonprofit sector, coming from the workforce development field where we would prepare individuals for employment. And I was the personal and professional development workshop facilitator and coach. And I would, do these phenomenal self-help workshops to help them build their confidence so they can go out there and secure a job and help them with their interviewing and their presentation and to develop their brand. And
Right.
in doing that, me and my colleagues would find that these individuals became more self-aware, more conscious, more confident, more courageous, just appreciating themselves more, moving past what maybe they have gone through, where many of them went through very difficult challenges.
Hmm.
And we saw the work of the inner self in an amazing way. But here was the challenge. The funders were more focused on that individual getting a job. So although they were growing personally, if they did not secure a job for whatever reason it might be, the program wasn't good enough.
Right.
You understand? And so the
Hmm.
pleasing sometimes it takes us away from what is most important, or it prevents us from looking at other factors that are as important. And so when we're so busy pleasing others, we lose ourselves. I'm speaking now to the individual. We lose ourselves in what's really important to us when we're in the pleasing business. Always honor yourself. When you honor yourself first, you're not working so hard to please. You may bless, you may assist, you may support, but
Hmm.
pleasing is a whole nother realm that is unhealthy and it doesn't serve you and it's not you showing up as your true and authentic self. The
Right.
third
Because
piece is
you lose
pruning.
yourself. I just want to say real quick, you lose yourself in pleasing, right? That's how I
You
feel.
lose yourself.
You lose
Well,
yourself.
if
Yeah.
you're
So,
pleasing, you already lost yourself.
right.
Because
That's
if
right.
you have to practice pleasing people, you haven't found yourself.
That's right.
It's just
That's
the
right.
practice of continuing to lose yourself.
Right. That's
Because
right.
every time you please somebody or you prove, which is the third practice of
Hmm.
performance expression, every time you prove or you please and you're working so hard to please, it
Hmm.
doesn't allow you to really shine in your true glory.
Hmm.
I have to prove something. All right, let's get down to the root of why you have to prove. You have to prove because you feel like you lack something, and so you have to overcompensate.
Hmm.
You see, that's an individual who is lost. or if there's a model in business or in these institutions that are practicing this constant proving without being aligned to the true vision and mission of why they exist, they're lost.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one is criticizing. Criticizing. Again, these are what we call the 5 practices of performance expression. We don't believe that these serve in any realm of the work that we do, and that's why we teach it. So the next one is
Mm-hmm.
criticizing, speaking negative of others, looking down on others.
Mm-hmm.
That's toxic. That is something we must let go of so we can truly be in the practice of unleashing our true self.
Mm-hmm.
And then the last one is complaining, why everything is not working for your good. Complaining that
Absolutely.
nothing is good for you, it's not serving you, even as an employee on the job.
Right.
Employees get so caught up in the complaining of why the system, the structure, and the way the organization is not good for them and not serving them. But those are all toxic behaviors that get in the way of a person rising up to their freedom, or an organization really being able to take personal responsibility, or being able to let go and truly tap into the infinite potential that is theirs.
Nice. That was awesome. I really hope people were listening. I hope people were taking notes, honestly, because I think you really laid out a pathway, for us to examine why we're not being effective at our social consciousness, at our social change, and what it looks like to bring. And really, when I say social consciousness, I'm also talking about integrating spiritual consciousness and social consciousness, bring it into that corporate environment, whether it's nonprofit or corporations or government or education or whatever, bring it in and using ideas that we often don't consider and looking at these pathways that you've been offering and that Soul Focus Group offers. We have got to think, outside of the thinking that got us in it. That's I just keep coming back to that, right? We can say think outside the box, but that's so overused. But we have been boxed in. We have been trying to solve the problem inside the box instead of going out. And I think what you've offered is a beautiful pathway, beautiful thoughts and feelings of a pathway to approach systemic change from a different angle. So I just really want to thank you for that, Tirza. I want to thank you for everything that you shared.
Thank you, Martin. I enjoyed this with you in the audience.
Absolutely. I did too. Hey, before we close out, can you share how folks can find you? One of the things that I want to say, because we're very intentional about this at Soul Focus Group, we don't have fear about our facilitators and trainers and people working with us and them being successful on their own. So we want to make sure that you share your information and that folks can find you with Soul Focus Group, and they can find you in the work that you do as well. So please share your contact information and your social with us.
Absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. So, friends, thank you so much for being with us today. I hope that you were blessed and you were inspired and you are ready to unleash yourself as we embark on this new year of 2021. Anything is possible, and you are a being of infinite potential. I invite you to follow me. My company is Tirza Motivates, LLC. And I am on all social media platforms, including Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Tirza Motivates. My handle is Tirza Motivates. I invite you to reach out to me, contact me, engage with me, and, let's keep doing this good work together. May you be blessed and fulfilled. Thank you.
Beautiful. And you can also find her with us at soulfocusgroup.com. You can find her at, facilitating our workshops. And as I said, we're so excited to have you a part of our journey, Tirza, and to be able to work collaboratively with you. Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to thank everybody for listening. As always, check out our podcast on all the platforms we talk about all the time, at Apple and Android and on YouTube. We invite you to come on this journey with us. Everything we do because we love you. We care about you. We're so happy that you are showing love and care to us by giving us your time and attention. We ask you to stay safe, to stay well, and most importantly, we ask you to stay soul focused.
If you wish to support and represent the Soul Focus Group, check out our apparel store at our website, www.soulfocusgroup.com/shop.